Hey everyone, you may or may not know that I am working on a game with my brother. The goal is to create a fantasy survival game with magic and magical creatures like dragons and such. And I'm working on the programming side of things, and my brother is working on all of the art. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to be making devlogs about kind of the technical side of things, and he's going to be making devlogs about art. The primary goal for this is not necessarily to make money, but that would certainly be a plus, and we're going to shoot for that. But really, the goal is to have a great learning experience about how uh, development works for games and also for other apps and such that we can put on our resumes. So if there's a problem with how we're making the game or something we could improve upon, don't hesitate to let us know. Um, we've decided to use the Godot game engine and Blender. So Godot for the exporting and for the code and different aspects of animations and textures, obviously. And also, we're using Blender for modeling and also some textures and some animations going to be done in Blender. Um, and I'm just trying to give you guys basically an overview of a month's ish work of a month's worth of work in hopefully under 20 minutes. So here, the first system that I made basically was a general utility system that has a lot of different, utilities, a way to mix between different values. For example, is one of the ones that I use a lot from it. Also, safe calling. So I can call uh, basically a function on an object without knowing the object's class. So if I wanted to call um, eat on a food class or whatever, I don't have to check to see if it's food. I can just say, no matter what, try to call it. Um, and if it doesn't have that function in it, it won't call it. Um, and that's a nice utility thing to have. Obviously, it's not useful everywhere, and it can be expensive to do it. In certain places, you'd rather check its class, but for some cases, it is nice to have. Um, it's useful. You can sidestep cyclic references sometimes, so it's nice to have. And another system that I've made is a save and load system that makes it a lot easier to keep track of files, basically. So um, at runtime, you can just create a file that references a certain path, and if it's not there, it will create it, and if it is there, it'll go ahead and load it up. And you can load data and save data to files, as well as similar systems for directories and that kind of thing. I've also made an input management system, and I know Godot has one already. It has an input map, but I wanted something a little bit more advanced. I needed certain inputs to be able to be checked at different times that wasn't happening in the Godot input map, so I need to create my own. And I'm really glad that I did. I've been able to add things like or actions. So if you press I don't know, like space or command, you can jump, for example. But also things like and actions, um, or double tap actions, triple tap, etc. That are a lot nicer to have my own system for because you can't do that kind of thing um, in the Godot input map. I've also made a setting system that keeps track of your inputs and also has certain settings of its own. So you can access at runtime, you can store a setting in the settings system, and that will be accessible to different parts. Well, to every part really, but you'll only use it in some cases. And so, for example, storing auto run or auto sprint would be done in there, and that's just a lot easier to use for having all of your settings in one central location. It's not for global variables. Obviously, you don't want to put everything in there, um, but certain things that you want the player to be able to change in a settings page or something and have it affected in real time, that's where you would put that kind of setting. And you can also save inputs to it, and it will recreate the inputs at runtime there. And then obviously there's an account manager system too that basically merges the settings and the and loading system. So you can save an account and load that account back up, and it'll automatically process its settings and set all of the necessary inputs up for it and that kind of thing. After these, I created a visual dragging system that basically allows you to drag an element across the screen. I know again, Godot already has a dragging system, but again, I found that it wasn't quite enough for what I needed to do. Um, Dragging around, um, items in an inventory, I wanted to have a little bit more customization. So you can use my system in the same way you would use the visual dragging system, but or the built-in drag and drop system. But I feel like it's a lot easier, and obviously I can change anything that I want to it uh, if I need to add another feature or anything like that. And honestly, right now it works just as well as the Godot's uh, built-in system. So why bother with it, right? And by the way, I'm using ClickUp for managing my um, productivity right now instead of Trello. I know Trello is a common option, but um, I feel like I need a little bit more structure to it than that. So I'm using ClickUp, especially because I have more than one person. So after I had that visual dragging system done, I created an infinite canvas system that basically made use of the visual dragging system to be able to put elements in an infinite canvas node, basically, and you could scroll across and zoom in and zoom out of the infinite canvas to change the position of the elements on screen, and that was really useful. I'm not sure. I actually made the infinite canvas system for a different app, but I thought it might come in handy. So while I am using Godot, I'm not new to it. I spent about probably between 6 to 8 months learning Godot, the ins and outs, how to really use it effectively before I started work on this game. And I've built a couple of projects before it, and the visual drag system and the infinite canvas system were both used in that in some of my other demo projects, and so I figured I would bring them over to this one too. And here I'm starting to add colors to it. This is just to give you guys a rough idea of how difficult each of these systems were for me to implement. So the general utilities, for example, there's a lot of different utilities, and some of them were super easy, and some of them are not. Um, but that was relatively easy, and then compared to things like the input system, um, was a little bit more complicated because I wanted to be able to convert that input to a dictionary, and then that dictionary to a string, really, so that I could save it and load it for settings. And so that was difficult to be able to just quickly turn a class into a dictionary. And I think I have a better way of doing that I'm going to try to implement soon. And I'm going to try to reproduce that for my save game feature in the future. I also made a system for modulators and tank values. And basically, what a modulator does is it keeps track of a multiplier or a set of multipliers. And these multipliers can be static. They can just, for example, if you're sprinting, you get a 2 times speed modifier, and that's it. But they can also be dynamic. So it can change across time. It can do that procedurally. You could specify how it does it with curves. It can pick random different curves and that kind of thing. And you have a lot of freedom to specify how certain actions affect the multiplier. And that's used for things like momentum multipliers, keeping track of how fast you're going, and applying different modifiers to help it out, like a sprinting modifier or maybe a movement boost modifier or something like that. And then tank values are just a way to store a value that's going to be continuously clamped, basically. So, for example, jetpack fuel would be a tank, and you can interact with them procedurally. through valves. A valve changes the value of the tank procedurally based off of how empty or full it is and how much time it was has passed since it was last emptied. So it's really useful for um, being able to ease in and ease out transitions for like filling up jetpack fuel or coming off of cooldown for something, jump stamina, that kind of thing. I've also made a head system, which is really just a way of um, interacting with the world, but also viewing the world. So it's a camera with a raycast coming out of it, and so it's used to say, okay, what are you looking at, and display that to the user at the same time. Later, I made an enhanced body, which is just a kinematic body. But the problem with Godot's kinematic bodies is that it doesn't interact well with the rest of Godot physics. So the Godot, so if you had a kinematic body that ran into a rigid body, um, one of two things would happen depending on how you had set it up. Either the kinematic body would just stop, or the rigid body would go flying, because the kinematic bodies by default have an infinite amount of mass. So the enhanced body changes that. It allows kinematic bodies to have inertia and to apply forces um, to other objects and to have forces applied to it. Um, and in that way, it's a lot easier to interact with the world around it. And then using that enhanced body, I created a player body which can run and jump um, and do a lot of other things like wall running, sliding, crouching, obviously for sliding, and a lot of other things like that. Um, and so hopefully this starts to give you guys an idea of where I am in terms of developments, what kinds of features I have right now. Um, and I'll quickly go ahead and show you the what it feels to play the game right now and how that works. And I'll give you guys an idea of how the character controller feels and kind of um, how smooth it is. Um, and it's not perfect. There's changes that I'm going to have to make, but right now, this is my minimum product, and I'm going to have to move on to the later stages of development. And later, when it comes to uh, polishing and that kind of thing, I might revisit the player body and make it a little bit more smooth. But for now, this is what I have. So this is the resource, and this is looking at, for example, here's a jump power curve. So if you based off of how many jumps you have left, if you have all of your jumps left, you get max power. If you only have a few of your jumps left, you get slightly less power, for example. And there's others. So for example, this is your crouch. So this is what it looks like when you crouch. Your momentum slowly decreases to half of what it was when you started crouching, and you also get a lingering effect that is a static modifier of 0.5. So it stays there. And just to give you a quick look of how this is in action, um, and this is going to be laggy because I'm running OBS in the background to record this. Um, but you can climb up to the top of this hill, um, and you can slide down. Um, and so here we're sliding. I can shift to slide, and we get a little bit of a slide boost. Um, here's another slide boost. I can jump, can double jump, and I can triple jump, and I can keep on adding more jumps if I wanted to. I gave myself a jetpack, and all this you can change. So this system that I have right now is not. It doesn't work very well in terms of it doesn't feel like a good movement, but that's just because of the values that I have set right now. But those can change. So now we're going to wall run some. Um, and here wall running. You can jump off of that wall run and we'll wall run over here. And that right there, what just happened is I just ran out of wall run energy. So I have to wait for my energy to recharge before I can wall run again. and that's fully customizable too. You can turn off that feature if you don't want it. Um, uh, we can interact with rigid bodies. So there's the blue is a rigid body, yellow is a static body, but it's super bouncy. Um, so um, I mean, I can move these around, which is not standard feature. This is that enhanced body coming into play, because usually that does not work. And then also these yellow ones can bounce you away. So let's see if I can get a good example there. A little bit difficult, but there it is. I bounced off the face of it. Um, and then I mean, yeah, it's far from perfect, and it is really laggy right now, just because I'm also running OBS in the background, so I can share this with you guys. But there's an example of the bounce. But that's where it is right now, and I'm sure there's going to be more to see from it in the future. But for now, this is where we are. Um, I'm planning on having these devlogs go out weekly, kind of, so you can see how much I've been able to do in a week. But this is where we are now. My next thing that I'm going to work on is an item system, um, and kind of building up that framework. I'm not sure to what extent I'll have it done in a week, but that is my plan right now. And that was a slide boost into the rigid body, and you see that it moved it a lot more because I had a lot more momentum going into the hit. So it works well, and I apologize. It is laggy, but that is again just because I'm running OBS in the background and I'm on a super old computer. I'm on a toaster essentially. So there you go. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.